Good afternoon and welcome to Biztech's APAC Cybersecurity Show. It's Monday, the 30th of January, and every Monday at 2 p.m. Singapore, Beijing time, we update the region on the latest threats and incidences to help you protect yourselves better. Now, joining the conversation to bring an expert lens to the show is my co-host, Benjamin Ang. He's the head of Cyber and Homeland Defence at the Center of Excellence for National Security at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University, coming out from Singapore. Ben, as always, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Good to be here.
Now, Ben, what are we going to be looking at today at the start of the year of the rabbit? Really from the start, meaning the work week. I think a lot across the region, especially in China, everyone's back at work today.
Well, unfortunately, we might be a bit inauspicious, but cybersecurity doesn't always start with good news for the year. It's a couple of reports saying that basically the 7 reasons why global cyber threats are going to increase and why Japan is one of those countries which has been singled out as a place where cyber threats are on the rise.
Okay, so now Ben, for a start, okay, let's put the problem in the context. The annual cost of cyber crime, according to Cybersecurity Ventures, is expected to be 8 trillion in 2023. So it's a huge problem. And there are seven reasons why these, 7 key reasons around it. I think the first one, Ben, is talent and resources. Now, walk us through that global problem right now.
So, Brian, the problem is that the economy is not great around the world and people are cutting costs. And you've seen big tech companies laying off hundreds, not thousands of people. And if these cuts are going to affect the cybersecurity departments, then a lot of companies are going to be short of qualified and experienced good cybersecurity staff. And that means that there's less people to handle threats, which are not going to decrease because cyber criminals, don't lay off. In fact, during times like this, they probably, start hiring more. So you're going to end up with less people having to handle more threats. And that's a very, very tough job to be in.
Okay, the second reason around this is also the fact that you're actually having malware as a service now. Ransomware as a business has become cheaper. Tell us about this, because this, quite frankly, shocked me.
Sad to say that nowadays the software tools are so easy to use. You can actually rent. You don't even need to buy your own malware. You can rent it for less than $100 a month. So you have a subscription and you can use this malware to go and carry out your own ransomware attacks. You just give a cut to the malware provider, just like you would have your own Amazon store or your own Shopee or Lazada store. Now you can have your own malware, ransomware business. Just give a cut to the platform provider.
Gosh, I mean, you talk about, unfortunately, democratizing of this crime. And this is likened then to the drug dealers dealing on every street corner. So basically, any IT guy can get into this business for as little as less than $100 a month.
Let me give you an idea. It's not just any IT guy can get into the business. Any person can get into this business.
Why?
Because these malware as a service companies, they have help desk. If you go in and you're just a regular criminal who doesn't have that much IT skills, the help desk will teach you how to do it. They'll help you set up your Bitcoin account so that your victims can pay to you. If you don't know how to tell your victims how to pay, they will even teach your victims how to pay you. This is a full service suite.
Gosh, okay, that's frightening. And that's something that perhaps we should look at as a topic on its own on a separate show. Now, the third reason around this is also around why global attacks will soar in 2023 is obviously geopolitics. Tell us how Russia and other cyber criminals in those areas are getting into the act in a huge way.
Well, Brian, if we cast our minds back to the previous episode, we talked about how in a geopolitical conflict, everybody gets hit because even though you're not a government and you're not a military, you have business with them, or maybe you're a club or association who has members who are from government or from military or an NGO, or even if you have customers who happen to be military. So you are a target regardless of who you are, because you are a way to get into those harder targets, sad to say. And of course, with a lot of sanctions going around now, some countries actually have a track record of using cybercrime to fund their operations. So it's part of the GDP.
And Ben, I'm going to put this in the context and put a number around one organization. In 2021, a Russian-based organization called REVIL, REVIL, Ransomware as a Service Group, was responsible for, and listen to this, 18,000 attack attempts in the US alone. Now, they were also the group behind the Colonial Pipeline attack, which is a very well-known attack. Now, they claim to have annual revenues of 100 million US. So this is really a huge business.
Absolutely. You know, some of these big ransomware gangs, and REvil is one of them, there's Conti, they have revenues that are bigger than the GDP of many small countries.
I know, that's crazy. And you talk about small. The fourth reason why cyber attacks are going to soar this year is the fact that cyber criminals are not only targeting large companies now, they're going into smaller organizations as well.
Well, sorry to all my friends in small and medium businesses, we are all targets. And especially because you have less defenses than the big companies, than the banks, than the government and the military, you are easier targets. So we really have to make sure that you're not the easier target. Make sure that you shore up your defenses.
Now, the fifth reason around that is also many organizations are now starting to realize they can't afford cyber insurance. Now, in the past, a lot of companies, as part of their risk management, would just take out insurance in order to protect themselves as part of their protection mechanism. So, you know, if they needed to pay someone off and de-risk themselves from an attack, that's one of the ways they do it. However, with soaring premiums, they may not be able to afford cyber insurance or coverage anymore.
So it's just a gamble, right? If you don't pay for insurance, then at some point you'll be paying ransomware. The problem also is that insurance in itself does not decrease the number of cyber attacks. As a knock-on effect, the insurer may require you to do certain steps which improve your security. For example, they require you to get good security systems and have certain practices and processes like maybe two-factor authentication, secure passwords, which will help. But insurance itself doesn't actually increase.
Now, the next thing that we need to be cognizant of is obviously just how they can carry out these attacks have just exponentially increased. So let me elaborate. In 2021, there were a total of 11.3 billion IoT devices worldwide. That's going to reach something like 15.1 billion in 2023. And then you have also remote employees. In 2022, 26% of US employees work remotely. So essentially, they have many ways, as we've talked about in previous shows, of also getting and attacking an organization.
Absolutely. And I have to ask, have you changed your Wi-Fi router password?
Yes.
Have you changed your smart TV password? Have you changed your smart fridge password? And then, you know, a zillion other things in your home.
Now, that's something that we all need to be looking at. In fact, after our previous show, I actually went across and changed a lot of my passwords. Thanks, Ben, for that advice. Now, the final point why of the 7 reasons why cyber attacks are going to rise in 2023 exponentially is reason number 7 is hacktivism is rising. Now, tell us about this, Ben.
hacktivism has gotten a lot of prominence in this last year because of the Russia-Ukraine war. It's been around of course, for a long time. But during the Russia-Ukraine war, people who were not part of the militaries of either country, but felt that they were patriotic or they wanted to help in the action in some way, were able to take action. And because of things like malware as a service, or the fact that tools can be shared, people who don't actually have a military background or cyber attack background are able to obtain these kind of tools. And while you may think, okay, it's well and good that if the good guys, were able to get hold of tools and attack the bad guys, but the problem is when the good guys get hold of tools, not all of them are actually good guys. Not all of them are very careful where they leave their tools. And to be fair, even the NSA and the CIA have lost tools before. If you lose a rifle, it's one thing, but if you lose a malware that can wipe out thousands of computers, it can be a problem.
That's very interesting. Now, on that note, Ben, I want to segue now to putting, as we have done in previous episodes, different countries in the spotlight in terms of their cybersecurity awareness and environment. Today, the country focus of the threat landscape is of Japan. Now, cyber attacks on Japan have soared as hackers have targeted vulnerabilities specific to Japan. The number of attacks have doubled in the last 3 years as intruders exploit weak defenses. Now, some of them have been highlighted as we talked for the same issues that we talked about just, as part of the 7. But Ben, Japan has some unique things as well. Why is this the case, Ben?
I don't want to rain on Japan because this report doesn't look good, sure, but it's also happening to businesses in countries all over the world. The fact of the matter is the vulnerabilities they're talking about, which is like too much reliance on vendors, or they don't update their systems when the weakness has been found, are things that happen to small and medium businesses in every country. So we don't want to point one finger at Japan and have 4 fingers pointing back at ourselves.
But it's also an issue where it's back to a talent problem, isn't it? They don't have enough qualified people. So in the past, they've outsourced this to vendors. And one of the problems with Japan is they don't change their vendors very often because it's all about relationships. So a survey of 1,000 cybersecurity officials at major Japanese businesses found that 80% of companies have never changed their main vendor.
And of course, that is a serious number. Now think about small and medium businesses in our countries. How often do they change cybersecurity vendors? Do they even have cybersecurity vendors?
And that brings us to another point, the fact that detection is also an issue. If you don't even know you're being attacked, you have a problem. Now, in most countries, the average is about 42% of detection. According to Trend Micro, in Japan, it's only 34.5. So, of course, the statistics can mean many things, but this is also a highlight of the fact that perhaps we need to be more cognizant, and as you said, across the region, that we are under attack, and we need to be detecting these attacks earlier rather than later, and acknowledging them as well.
Brian, you're right about the statistic, because the statistic seems to indicate it's the confidence level. It could just mean that the Japanese IT officials are more cautious when they are interviewed for these kind of questions. So whereas other countries' officials might be over-cautious, over-optimistic. But okay, let's get back to the detection thing. And that's a very important point, because a cyber attack has many stages. And the attacker will actually be dwelling in your system for a while before they actually do something like take data out or put in a ransomware. So they'll sit in the system, in the network. And the key thing is global median dwell time. The median dwell time, and there's a recent Mandian report that says that actually it's good news overall, because in Asia, it used to be 76 days on average that an attacker would be sitting in your network. Now it's down to 21 days. So hopefully Japan gets on board and you learn how to detect, because it's one thing to prevent, but a lot of times you can't 100% prevent. Then you must be able to detect. And when you can detect somebody who's not supposed to be in your system, whether it's a strange looking login or from a strange looking location, or strange activity that why is this particular account copying more files than normal, then you can take action. So detection is another important part.
And finally, Ben, I think one of the final thing that we want to stress is also the fact that having governments understand the scale of the problem and having a national cybersecurity strategy for cyber defense, whether it's defense, whether it's at a small business level, it's at a country level, that's really key, isn't it? And the Japanese government has recognized that and is cognizant and is drawing up a plan.
Absolutely. There are so many countries that have actually gone ahead and have cybersecurity strategies. Of course, and sitting in Singapore, our national cybersecurity strategy has actually gone through a second iteration and been fine-tuned. And a key part actually of a national cybersecurity strategy is that the nation is usually able to come up with policies, but a key part of it is that we are all part of the national strategy, by which I mean, as organizations, businesses, individuals, we are all part of the national cybersecurity.
On that note, Ben, that's a wrap on this week's APAC Cybersecurity Show. Thank you very much for coming in and being a co-host today.
Thank you, Brian. Glad to be here.
Now, we've been speaking to Benjamin Ang, Head of Cyber and Homeland Defence and Center of Excellence of National Security at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Now, we've been on Biztech Asia Pacific Cybersecurity Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It'll also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.